Let's go ahead and ask if, let's go ahead and ask if you want to, why can't I do this? Is that right? I guess Frank's first, right? We're two turns from now, last week. I will go this way, and I will walk 5 turns. Let's go here. Let's go that. Okay, so I'm thinking about starting at the war sequence, just to see if war is that way. Because I'm afraid of him, settling here. Because they won't. I've seen this happen too many times. They'll settle just off the west of it. So I want to make sure that I stop that. It might be a good idea to stay at peace, wait for the settler to be unprotected. Even though the AI never doesn't protect their settlers. They always protect their settlers at all times. Yeah, so never mind. Let's go ahead and just rush the boat. It's going to be 8 turns. There's something else I really need to build. Then the boat will be good for exploration and to find out what's going on in Europe. I always want to make sure that I know at all times what's going on in Europe. To see which cities are in and stuff like that. So we should be being able to explore very, very soon. This way, and the setup that we're leaving. So we're going to stop right there. This is part 1 of our series. Hey, if you like this series, if you're excited for me to finally play England, try to dominate the world, which is what I'm planning to do with my gaming. Please consider dropping a like. It helps out tremendously. And thank you guys so much for watching. I'm very excited for the series. Thank you guys so much for the support. See you guys tomorrow. Hello, Legion. This is Adrian. Thank you for being here. I'm thrilled to welcome you at last to a brand new daily series in Civilization 6 Rise and Fall, which I lovingly call it Great Scout. Now, you take a look at the series primer. I want to say thank you to UK, who were kind enough to provide me with the overview of the Rise and Fall expansion. And thanks to them, I get to break the game to you a little early so we can enjoy a couple of episodes together and pass that last little bit of time before the expansion drops in midnight tonight. So a very special thank you as well to the good folks at Access, not only for working hard to create and awesome improve on this game that we all love so much, but to those at Access who know we want, without whom I wouldn't be able to surprise everyone a day early like this. So thank you everyone for making this possible. You're awesome. Now let's play Rise and Fall. Just so we're clear, this is the full version of Rise and Fall, minus any last minute quick fixes that may be applied just before or just after launch. This is a review build, not a preview, so we will be playing a campaign. Playing a Scotland for our first campaign was a lot of the moment Rob was announced, not only because my channel namesake is associated with a certain landmark that serves as a nation for and I was looking at but it so happens that I'm Scottish by ancestry as well, so Scotland is because this is my very first full game of Rise and Fall. We thanks to the review, I actually got a bit of time to practice before I played this, which is nice, but I stopped short of like 150 to 130 turns because I want to take my time with this series and I want to experience the game fully for the first time with you guys. I don't want to gloss over all the ways, large and small, in which the game is different. I'm going to really sink my claws into the new features. I'm going to kind of be deliberate, a little bit slower paced than I typically am, especially in the beginning, and go over the interface with intent so that you guys can hopefully keep up with the changes in my decisions and learn about the expansion while you follow along. So this is going to be a really straightforward and pure playthrough of Rise and Fall, which you might have noticed when I had the series primer up. Here it is again. King difficulty, especially since we want to really explore the new stuff without having to break our backs to catch up with the AI bonuses. Standard size comments map, standard speed, standard everything. The only victory condition I haven't enabled as usual is score a victory, because turn limits are about. And because we're playing in Scotland, of course, Victoria's England is in the game, which you may have noticed as well. I have absolutely zero mods enabled. In future series, I'll have an on-screen element to list those too. But for now, we're playing a totally mod-free stock game of Rise and Fall as Scotland. So with that said, let's bring the world tracker back up, and let's go ahead and found our capital. Here's Sterling, and actually, just for those who might not be familiar with the features of Rise and Fall, really quickly, I'm going to go through the new features. This is built into the game. So this is a really quick run-through that you would see if you were starting a new game. It doesn't take particularly long time. Let's go through this, so I just walk through it. First thing, historic moments. Earn historic moments by accomplishing great feats in the game. Each moment gives you points towards your hero score and can be reviewed in your timeline, which is one of the features. There's a ton of features that show everything's cool. Hero score indicates how well your civilization is doing in your current era. Track how your hero score is progressing to avoid the dark age or earn gold age for your next game. If you fail the blue meter, you will avoid a dark age. If you progress the earth, you will avoid a golden age. Golden and dark ages give you bonuses and can affect the quality of your cities and citizens. So those meters are always down here around the next turn. And the next action indicator. Loyalty is a measure of how committed your city and citizens are to your civilization. If loyalty ever reaches zero, the city will rebel, and that's whether zero is here or others here. Then become a free city. Open the claims, not the reserves, and bring loyalty and pressure. Governors can stabilize the city's loyalty. Governors also have unique abilities that unlock their titles. These give special abilities in the city with the governor and the sun. Alliances are now specialized, and each type provides a distinct advantage. Over time, you can enhance alliance to provide even more powerful advantages. Civilizations can band together and declare an emergency when critical events happen in the game, such as a nuclear strike. The emergency is declared by other civilizations against the offending player. There are rewards for whichever side is victorious in the emergency withdrawal, so it doesn't mention this, but there are rewards for the target of the emergency if the players going against that target fail. That's stopping them from whatever. The city banner has been updated to provide clarity and easier access to critical information. Clear your civilization's icon to see more information on loyalty or governor portraits from here to manage your governors. There we go. So that is the walkthrough. Let's see what we can do here. So actually, we have what we have here is massive stone, so we might need to go down here to start off here. We're fortunate. Got guys over here, got caught up there. There's a deer nearby. To get a scout going, not like a 6-turn production time. Then again, we're playing with stability, so I suppose that's really going. I play a quick, usually a little more than I can pace myself with this particular one. We're going to start with a scout. The production focus right now doesn't do anything. I actually go to citizen managements. Yeah, there's one obvious choice you do first, so you go first right towards it, just right next to the open and see the thing yourself. That's something else other than confidence. I think good. Let's make a choice. I'm going to go with the strongest person in the ownership strategy. See if we do it. And even if you don't get stoked, we're going to need that full set, because I do want to legend cards. And then this warrior, let's see what that was here. See, it's we're fairly central where we are, where this one could be. Hills or second line. Let's have a look and see. Yep. It's just one file words you can see from the other side. Just step there and see if you want. Okay, here's some totems. We got here, so energy map. You can't see it yet, but okay. Here's the right thing going. Okay, this is good actually. This will be size 2 by the time first cast I see it again. Second one. Nice. Very nice. Okay, so we are officially able to sell our instrument. Let's go ahead and get that pretty good. Oh, nice. We got a free scout. That was perfect. We're going to keep going with scout for training, but now we can explore double. So I said we move back opposite direction with that one. So we got a notification here. We got the outdoors has been contacted. So first, historic moments. We're going to bring this into your civilization. us that really want to combat this. We need that like yesterday. If we finished astrology, we should honestly have some irrigation for writing. Especially since we got used to writing. That's the central thing. Or should we go for animal husbandry? Because we got first. Scotland, again, is all about happy cities. Scottish Enlightenment, happy cities receive an additional 5% science and 5% production, and 15 to very close to 1 word science and advance. So it's all about human development. That's what we put in. And the bad part is, of course, being in these city states, or other being nice cities, you go one thing else I'm thinking about is religious groups. Yeah, religious groups. Yeah, it's not new. So you have cotton, furs, stone, rice, dyes, and some deer, yes, and some copper recent dishes. Knives. And so the tradition could give us a culture boost. And we could probably benefit from that because Scotland gets science boosts a good bit. Again, they don't get the culture boosts in the same way. So doing something to bolster our culture would be a good decision. Chicks love it. All right, too. Versus, again, the whole tradition of cotton, dyes, silk, spices, sugar, plantations, citrus, using cotton as the dye. I feel like we're doing a little bit better in terms of cotton dye. I don't know, it's not even. If you colonize this area, you sell this area, and you colonize it with money. It's a choice. I think I'm going to go for seeing how many actually have. I think I'm leaning slightly towards old tradition. So I think not old tradition about even this guy, the masters. Because that is not the only growth dependent on certain resource types. It's really similar. This is just based on plantations. This is based on masters. Not all types of plantations, but certain types of plantations. I just gotta make a decision. Let's do all this stuff. That's where you get closer to the masters. Requires for mysticism. Again, you have that boost, but it's not quite massive. Another green. Absolutely. I've said trade delegation, you get some perception. Plus, no other part of the team position. Your delegation is so let's actually let's play the fun game. Because we finished pottery, big shot. Let's send the delegation to the other. We received your trade delegation and the troops and we're already treated as the essence stuff. Next one. Not a good relationship on the this area with my scouts. And I'm looking at that kind of bring the warrior back up from Sterling. Warrior at least settlers getting on in return. Okay, so that scout, other green scout got away. I think he went down this direction, so that's another good reason to bring the warrior back up home. There's our first settler. So I want to go for Stonehenge. Here's my next question. Right, I want to go by a tile. I do need a monument. for money that will certainly discourage. You would be incredibly lucky to discourage if you went for a temporary money. I could go follow you to ability for 31. You can see how ability compared to default 3 turns, which is on production turns. Just 6 turns. Could I wait 6 turns? Maybe I'll sink some turns into the builder. That's what I'll do. Put it on production mode, sink some turns into the builder, and as soon as I have, what's that amount of wood? 50? Place Stonehenge. Then I'll do that. And bring you up here. We're actually going to bring the slinger back here. So, settler. You want to have here. So, I'm not missing something. Okay, so for the next technology, we have land now. I can go for archery, go ahead and run with my slinger. We also have fun irrigation. Yeah, let's go for irrigation. No restrictions on the cities you can enter. That's new. Cool. What more about you? 4 or 5 cities, and they all try to expand, they all try to be equal to 3 cities, can you compete? Long term. 3 cities, they won't go hard now. It's usually about 4 that people compete for. That's before they stop. What companies make it do? You have to be trying to work everything. But every time you get either a food or new others, parts of others, where possible, why empire has a bunch of cities. Or you can help folks with other and improve their abilities so that the cities without reputation get more. And you can move governors around as well. So it's a new dimension of city management instead of six government. So Victor is a military focus job. So key reasons that here is the combat strength by so I really feel like Victor wants to put in position. The question is where am I? What's going to fight? You know what? It's Sterling. It's Sterling is going to assign to Sterling to the table. The returns are going to be established now. That's okay. Adding to the fact that you gotta see how to do something straight. I can really train I might have doesn't, then we might be okay. But what I'm looking at here is that this will go to the line and I'm getting reason plus 1 adjacent to the one's already being turned on this next year, so it's really possible to put in place that maybe we can do that. Yes. Right now, I don't have a lot of paper return. I consider it candy if we could secure paper return. I might use her later on. I don't know if you're right now. She definitely would be because one of the principles is actually let it be right near us. Okay, so Victor. Asha is a loose governor. Asha is a loose expression that takes Magnus is a production-based production yield on farmers and each rule in the city has its base ability and then production capabilities. Those personalities. We'll go through these individually as we go through the game. I'm not going to go through the screen outlet. Just as a broad overview of different governments. and beyond that. So, we're going to prove a picture and give them one of these. I kind of want to use Magnus Stewart. Production version of yeah, you're right. Yeah, let's go ahead and put in line. Set her to and when she's done establishing the election of Serene, comes through to the return. So we actually might get the bonus for the 76 right now, which would give us additional air score in the beginning of the next era. I think we might. Oh yeah, never mind. That's Scout back there. Scout. Probably. So just bring the Scout over here and we can explore this stuff. After Grenade is blocking me in. Those archers are firing back. Surprise. So interesting, it now says an unmet city state as opposed to an unmet player. So I don't think it used to say that. I feel like it used to say an unmet player, either one of the primary city states, so that's important. Alright, so now we're building damage districts. Well, go ahead and build for, see, we already have forces in one of our cities. So we can do horseback riding. We already have the ability to build barracks like this because it's safe. So water would be huge for reinforcing and the ability to build a ship. Do that. And sailing is really good too. Scout around the circle in the desert area. Right now we have one build charge left here. And I think that one will be inspired. I guess we're looking for very good back in this level. Purchase that pile and punch him. Watch my own. It's either that or go for these guys. The iron one. That'll be good for production. Alright, so this settler, I'm going to use my scout to scout the hill settler. I'm going to use them up here a little closer to where there's no bait. And now that we're going to do A, we're going to do this. The first was defense tactics that did improve. And also for the history, so looking at the defensive tactics. Now we need to run war preparation applicator defense package. So they give us some additional means of right. We're just not listing that, but anyway, so if you want to okay, that's it for this content. You can start researching the seeds X on what scouts can do in the water. Nice. So we are now suzerain level 11. We have 2 more years for the money that now established there. And now we can purchase the city center buildings with fake. So check out some certain level things that I can just buy a rare company. Apply filter filter, which that's really simple. The granary is probably what I'm going to apply first, just because we've been putting on granary through it, and it just makes too much sense. And I can go ahead and fire it. Thing here. Now we're a little bit down on the creating tools I can run. But that's a huge bonus that I'm currently getting by having unintended. It is my mentality. Purchase yes, and I do. Oh my god, and lettuce. So if we can get our fake version up, we're going to be able to do so much with fake in this game. This is insanely cool. I'm loving every second of it. Alright, so I'm going to take the scout high. Now that he's hammered, they like it very quickly. It's kind of annoying. And actually, speaking of like saturation, it's really good like that. This actually really like let's see, that's actually a little bit better, I think. I like it. Like, there was colors in the compared to all the statistics over here to see the page. Shouldn't take too long here. Done. Oh, hi! There you are. Alright, now I know we still have a bunch of these programs, so that's the only thing I was going to get that nice boost there. So I think that was a boost. The better boost towards me, I think it's less than mine, so that's not going to be in a turn. Okay, I'm going to stop this episode here. 1520 BC, turn 63. We're 10 turns away from finishing the temple on this, so we'll get that next episode. And we still have lots of places where we can expand. We are building a new trainer to replace the one we lost. We're off to an amazing start this series. Let's have a quick compare history timeline. In terms of our years of running, we have a good ways to go before we get back to normal age, but I think we'll be able to do it. It's going to be very difficult. Like I talked about earlier, there's a change that we decided to finish out and we'll do that at the end of the course. Of course, you can't just spend a whole day in the village. But it's not impossible. It's going to be very, very bad. But actually, we're going to keep pushing to what's up in the cities. We're starting to go one or two more. Again, I can purchase stuff with me. But this is now, of course, we're going to go for the sites as well. So, any city near a river will help me produce bait from territory. So, it just looks like I think I can do less of in the area, so I can get a city down as fast as possible. I may go ahead and put a city here, which would give me access to working all of these tiles, which would be a very good spot to have cities to take advantage of both pyramids and Petra. We can also, it's either there or there, but I think I like to get so, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this one, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to follow along in new episodes. These great Scots are coming out every day. Right now, the first step every day at 9 a.m. and things, but normally at noon. Time drops are always welcome. Let me know what you think. I'll see you next time. Hello, Legion. This is Adrian. Thank you for being here. Let's play some more Civilization 6 Rise and Fall in our great Scott series. So, things have just been amazing for the first several episodes. Well, not several, but the first 3 episodes. It's been nuts how well we're doing. I really don't even know what to say. There's just so many things to think about. We have a third city on the way. We have fended off the initial barbarian problem pretty handily. We're in a golden age. We have governors that are helping secure suzerain status of valuable city-states. It's just we're kicking this. So let me go ahead and compare this to the Canada as well. I'm going to go ahead and just work my mission for you. Research options. So I have, for state. We're building a scout. Okay, so I talked last episode about how I think the best summon to put here would be, okay, so we can see from the map here that this is where all life is exerting monthly pressure. A good amount of monthly pressure here. because they're capital. But even over here, they're being full pressure. So I think this is going to be a good spot right here. It'll be right on the border of where the multi-pressure ends. Right now, anyway. Right here, this content is very nice shape. Look at a nice fade here. Not using any mods. Again, this is nice to see. I remember Sarah mentioned in one of the live streams that she's noticed a little bit more love for bays. I think she was on a live stream with Ed, and maybe some of the map generation and continents has been improved to create bays more naturally. We have white dye with no lesson, and they actually got some really now, I may be able to finish these things off and get a function of the process. Yep, let's do it. And we can go with it. Once you turn away from the trader and adding to the beat, turns away from the towers. They didn't die, which is good actually, because it's much better than the orders. They're getting a solution to it. Taking it back. 3 turns away from Sarah, also 3 turns away from our enemy. So all of this happened to me for, yeah, she likes me now, because we haven't been dealing with learning so much. Interesting to see the movie break out a little bit. Let's see if there's something we can do. Yes, Billy. More retribution. All change for it. Let's not denounce this play. Interesting that we have access to all of these. Let's make a deal. See if there's something she can give us.
Fill up my cup to the tip, it's a must, I'm a pour, but I'm real too practical. Test, I can mix a combination, spell check, act shorty, like conversation, let me live, let me act, real talk, vision vivid, I done seen body bags, toe to toe with any victim, I done shook killer tags, talking money over grams, like rich was a rag, couple homies on the tag, hey, you out, you a fan? Well, I be goddamn, but God don't exist, so I guess it's just tan. From a whole nother planet, hopping off the trans and smoking a bandit. Working in my spaceship, looking at my stash shit, thinking I relate shit, never on no fake shit, I ain't on a jump shit, stack 'em up like rocks, bitch. Working in that every couple murders, make the body stack. Got a problem, ain't kill me, fuck boy, you know, as simple as that. Backpack with the black cat, black mask, outcast, now I'm in the fucking black trance. Fuck a cop, take a life of a black man. Fuck a op, tip 'em up in a black sack. Doing my blood, Lucifer in the flesh. I mean, you just another close to death, straight out the septic boy. Me and slow left with track neck. All the limbs we hacking from the fucking body stacking. The fucking crazy manic when I'm at the top, don't panic.
go ahead and put down. So let's see. Let's get. We can go with one of these initial questions. I would make these are right away. These from just could be wrong about that. We'll see here in a second. So we did find land with our ship, and the 2 units that we have are in our ship right here. And nothing too exciting here because they technically could land with 1 unit. Maybe that might not be a bad idea. We'll get on land there just like that. And yeah, you can do that. I don't know if I made myself clear here. You can do that by pressing either G or clicking the Go To button here on the unit command bar, and you can also right click. So in other words, if I had my Pioneer here selected, I could right click on this tile and you would move there. However, I'm not sure I want to send more than 1 unit ashore because this does not look like a necessarily great location. So I'm going to end the turn by clicking the end turn button, and we begin turn 2, 1493 AD. Now, the beginning of the game is never 100% predictable because since the game is randomly generated, you're going to end up with different types of land masses. But there are some things you should look out for, like right here, fish. This looks like a very good location. Oh, that is a very good location in terms of food production. Now we have met our first Native American empire, the Incan Empire, and unfortunately, while it looks like we are on an island here, generally the Native Americans are pleased towards you. They're not going to declare war. They're not going to be hostile, and that's why we can only say there will be peace in our time. And they come into play in an interesting way, how they work with your civilization. So as you can see right here, we have 3 fish, and it's important to prioritize resources. Now, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to claim those 2 fish over there, I think, because settling here would be better. Now, the concept of settlements is a bit different from that in civilization. So I'm going to land my hardy pioneer right here. And as you can see, we got a treasure. Treasures sometimes spawn out of Indian cities after you enter them and talk to the chief, or they can sometimes spawn out of ruins. So now this is a treasure, and we've been approached by this a little earlier than I expected, but we'll get back to the settlement in a minute. The treasure is the defenseless unit, so if anybody attacks it, it's going to die. However, it is worth money if you can take it back to Europe. Unfortunately, it will only fit into 1 special ship. So in other words, if you want to stick it in your merchantman or your caravel, it will not fit. You need to buy or build a galleon. And I believe it says that somewhere on the treasure. It might, maybe not. Anyway, you need to build a galleon or buy one to get this unit back to Europe. And then once you get it back to Europe, it'll be this one's worth 596 gold, which is nothing to sneeze at. However, I find these units actually quite exceptional exploring the land, because since there aren't any enemies in Civilization 4 colonization, unless you declare war on them, it's not going to get attacked. So even now, I mean, we've met 1 Native American empire. They're not going to attack us. The other colonists are not going to attack us. There are no barbarian units in this one. There are no rebel units that would attack any of our units right now without first declaring war, so we'd have to know about it. So I find them exceptionally good at simply exploring the land, because there's really nothing else I can do with these units until I get a galleon. So that's what I do. And we're out of turns again, so I'm going to end the turn. And continue exploring the galleon. Like I said, this looks like it's just a small island, which is unfortunate, but this might actually benefit us a bit. There are some fairly good resources here. And if I settle my first settlement here, I'm going to discuss a little bit about why I would choose this location. Okay, first of all, there is some wood right here. Now, I know that the wood is not too strong. I mean, that is probably one of the downsides of this location. There isn't enough wood, technically speaking. There is tobacco, and tobacco is going to make us a lot of money once we build a farm on it and start really producing a lot of tobacco. And then once this settlement, eventually the Incans will get up the settlement after we put enough cultural pressure on them. And when that happens, I will be able to work the deer here. Unfortunately, I won't be able to build. I mean, there won't be a forest on it like I would prefer. Because, you're going to have to find a game start that suits you. And in this case, it's not always going to be perfect. So you got to sort of roll with what you got. And I'm just going to click the settlement button. I'm just going to click the build settlement button. And he will, the first settlement you build, the Native Americans will generally give the land to you for nothing. But afterwards, you will have to pay them for it, or you risk them declaring war on you. So now I'm going to enter the settlement, and you can do this by double-clicking on the settlement like that.
And this is one area that it differs quite significantly from Civilization 4. If you remember, in Civilization 4, you have citizens, but you can't really move them around like these. They're not specialized. And I think this is one of the most unique aspects of Civilization 4 colonization. There are a lot of things you can choose from these tiles. It's not simply this colonist works this tile and you get all of the stuff on there. As you noticed just a minute ago, I double-clicked them, and you drag them down to it, and you get to choose what you want them to focus on in the tile. For example, it has 2 grains. I could do that. That would give me more food. I could choose the lumberjack for 7 wood every turn, fur trapper for 4 fur, and tobacco planter for 2 tobacco. Generally, the one that gives the most is the best, and in this case, that would be lumber. But at the same time, we want rebel sentiment to go up, and that might seem a little strange to you, but in the beginning of the game, there are a couple of founding fathers that you want to get, and I'm going to exit the settlement and simply go over to the founding fathers. Now, instead of research, in Civilization 4 colonization, there are founding fathers, and you generate founding father points by doing various things, such as generating political points, exploring the world, trading, as you can see here, fighting battles, as you can see there, and of course the catch-all politics. Now, there are a couple of very important early ones here that you want to get before any of the AIs do, and that is minus 50% travel time to Europe. You already have enough exploration points simply by revealing tiles of the map. Now we need more political points, and we get political points by generating rebel sentiment, which is expressed in this game through the bell system. Here we have bells, Liberty bells, I guess. They're not just bells, not just any old bells. These are actually Liberty bells. And once we generate enough Liberty bells, our borders will expand. So in other words, the Liberty bells are sort of the equivalent of culture from Civilization 4, if you're familiar with that. They will expand your borders. However, one difference in this game over Civilization 4 is once your borders expand, you will not actually get to work any additional tiles. So what you see here on the screen is what you get. You're only going to be able to work the tiles immediately, the 8 tiles immediately surrounding your city. In my case, I can't work one of them because there is an Indian settlement on top of it. But like I said, that will eventually go. Most likely he'll give it away once my rebel sentiment is high enough and if he likes me enough at the time. If the Native Americans don't like you, then you'll probably have to fight them for it. Okay, so we've covered that. That is my approach to the beginning of the game. And you have our soldier right over here. And I'm going to talk about something else important to note about how units work in this game. So this is a soldier, right? Well, not exactly. It's a free colonist with soldier gear. When we go in here, remember I had a pioneer? He is now just a free colonist. This is because tools made him a pioneer. So we double click him and choose a profession, and right here you can, where is it? Oh, it should be around here somewhere. You should be able to become a pioneer. Anyway, you can't choose a profession from him in there. Here, you just drag him down to the garrison. And you can't, okay, I'm sorry. You can't choose an outside profession if your colony only has one civilian in it. So I would have to bring the soldier in. And we'll wait until that happens and I'll continue explaining. So here's the soldier. We're going to move him into Cusco. Now we do not declare war. And I'm going to explain why I did that as well. So what you can do with your merchantmen at this point, just explore a little bit more, and then you'll probably want to head back to Europe by selling into that zone over there on the right side of the map. And the reason you want to sell back to Europe is because your settlement will start producing crosses, as we can see right up here. Not right away. I think the default number of crosses produced every turn, and that will influence immigration. So the more crosses you produce, the faster you get immigrants. However, immigrants are generally not always the best. You usually want to contract specialized labor because having lots of people means you also have to generate lots of Liberty bells before you can declare independence. So generally, you just want to keep as many useful citizens around as possible. So in the beginning of the game, crosses are very useful, but as the game wears on, you probably want to focus less on generating crosses and more on generating Liberty bell sentiment and revenues. In other words, building products that will provide value that you can sell to Europe, and then you can use that gold to hire specialized labor. So they wanted me to choose a building in the settlement, and likely the best one to begin with would be the dock. The construction times here are very long because we haven't assigned anybody to the carpenter profession, which again is quite different from how production works in Civilization 4. In Civilization 4, you just work tiles with hammers on it, and that will increase the city's productivity. That's not how it works in Civilization 4 colonization, if you want to increase your productivity, you need to take lumber and turn it into production. So in other words, if I move my free colonist here into the carpenter's shop, he's only still going to be making in one production because he doesn't have enough lumber. As you can see right here, he needs more boards to be able to convert them into production. And so that would require us to move him over here and to make him become a lumberjack. Then you'd be generating some lumber, and then you could take that lumber and convert it into production. However, we're not going to do that just yet because he's really inefficient at the lumber profession. What we would want is a professional lumberjack who would generate double the amount of lumber that a simple free colonist would. And this is what I mean about specialized labor. All specialized colonists do double the work of a general free colonist. So if you want to have a very productive economy, you're going to need a lot of specialized labor. But we're going to choose the dock anyway because it's not really important. We're going to focus on that a little bit later as we get some more immigration coming in and get a few more free colonists. Okay, so I moved my soldier into Cuzco, and now we can click a special button because nobody else has, because I have not spoken with the city before. Click Speak with Chief, and you can do this in every Native American settlement, and he will give you a reward if you are the first to speak to him, if you are the first you're the first European to contact them. Otherwise, it will just tell you what they're interested in. And he gives us a couple of very important details here. The city is learned in the ways of expert farmers, and they need guns. And we can leverage this to our advantage. So expert farmer means I could take a free colonist or a criminal or an indentured servant, and I can send them to school here. As you can see, I can click the Learn Skill button, and that will make them into, in this case, will make this guy into an expert farmer. And as I mentioned before, the tools make him a soldier right now, but at the base level, if we go to Europe here, we can see a master carpenter, for example. These are trades, these are skills they have learned. Minus the tools, this is who they are. So you can have like the blank slate free colonist, which is what he is right now, but he can become anything else right now because he's a blank slate. Make of it what you will. I can make him into an expert farmer here, and that would mean that once I settle him in this settlement and I put him on a tile to generate food, which is represented by grain, he will be producing twice as much grain as a regular free colonist like this dude would. And like I said before, specialized economy is very good. You want to train your units. But I think right now what we need is somebody to help start improving the land. So I'm not going to send them to school there just yet. Now the other aspect of this is they want guns. The Incans are interested in buying guns. And there are a couple of resources you can buy and sell very early to the Native Americans that are worth a lot. One of them is guns and the other one's horses. Other stuff, they sell for a little bit, but generally you're not going to make much of a profit off of it. And we do need to do some trading here to attract another very important beginning founding father, and that would be Peter Minute. What am I talking about? Anyway, this Peter dude, whatever his last name is, he will decrease the cost of recruiting units in Europe by 25%. That is quite significant if you're going for a specialized economy. You don't have to train all of these units yourself. You can simply go in here and buy them. And that's generally how I play the game, but there might be some different techniques that somebody else. But this is personally what I found to be the most effective, and this means that I don't actually have to focus as much on schooling my units, because while native settlements can school units in the hands-on labor, in other words, professions that you do in here on this side, they cannot school on professions in the actual settlement. So they can school your units to make them more productive in terms of like lumberjack, an expert trapper, an expert farmer, expert fisherman. You're not going to be able to make them master carpenters because that is like European skill that they're not familiar with, right? So those you would actually have to build a schoolhouse, which you can see is one of the buildings right here. There's a schoolhouse right there, it is. And extend rate of healing is just slow. Okay, so we have now completed our first resource improvement, and that is the sheep right here. So we built a pasture on top of the sheep and that increased the production of food in it from 3 to 5, and also gave us 1 commerce on that tile. And maybe that sort of should segue into another point that I should make that changes in Civilization 4. in Civilization 5, and that is how research is generated. Now, in Civilization 5, research is generated by having population in your cities, but in Civilization 4, research is generated through commerce. You choose how to allocate your commerce. There are 4 different ones that currently haven't unlocked culture yet, but you can either commit your commerce to making gold, making espionage points, which are used to spy on other civilizations, or to making research points, which is used to complete and research stuff like what I'm doing right here with polytheism. The 4th one is the drama slider. It allows you to focus on turning or converting the commerce that your city is generating into culture. And it's probably one of the least used ones, in my opinion. Increasing your rate of culture will also increase your city's happiness, but the hit you take in science would not justify it unless you were going strictly for a cultural victory. It's really the only case when that would be justifiable to use that. And then the espionage, as I pointed out. So we're going to take a look at the espionage. You can dedicate commerce to this to increase the amount of espionage you make. Right now we only have met Julius Caesar, so he's the only one that we can actually dedicate or allocate espionage points towards. However, as we meet more civilizations, our espionage points are going to be stretched a bit thinly. There are various benefits to having espionage points, such as in this case I can now see his demographics, which are on this window. Right there, the demographics bar. But I think that will pretty much conclude it for episode 1 of my Civilization 4 tutorial. I will pick back up later, and I hope to see you then. Okay, welcome back to my Civilization 4 beginner's tutorial. When we left off, I was talking about the espionage screen. I believe I got to everything. You can perform various missions such as sabotaging improvements in your opponent's land, buildings, projects, stealing money from their treasury, etc. And my real issue with espionage is it only masks a problem. It's basically the tearing down of other civilizations when you could have been building yours up. And generally, it's a recipe for failure because while you're tearing down one civilization, the other civilizations continue building. So we have finished. Fortunately, I don't know why why the game is playing so badly. Frame rate is abysmal. But anyway, now that I've finished constructing a pasture, here I have access to that sheep resource, and now I'm going to move on and construct a mine on this tile up here. Now this is a hill, and the reason that I would choose this hill over, let's say, this hill here or here is not simply because it's closer, but because there is a river that runs past it, which means we get one additional commerce on that tile due to the river being there. So you'll see over here, for example, you have a hill with a on it as well, but it has 1 food, 1 hammer, and 1 commerce. And that's the similar situation over here. Now there are different types of terrain. Grassland is great for growing cities. It has 2 food on it if it's a flat piece of grassland. If it's a hilled grassland, it has 1 food, 1 hammer. Compare this to the plains, which on the flat plains it has 1 food, 1 hammer, and then on the hill plains